Today, we're diving into the absolutely incredible story of a single military regiment. I mean, this is a unit that has seen empires rise and fall, fought across continents, and even switched nationalities. It's an epic journey spanning 177 years. So, how on earth does a regiment survive all that? Let's get into it.
So that's the big question, right? This is a story about so much more than just battles. It's about endurance, it's about adaptation, and it's really about identity. And this whole epic journey starts not on some grand global stage, but on the rugged, really unforgiving edge of an empire. Okay, so let's set the scene. We're going back to the mid-19th century. British India is expanding. There's conflict everywhere. And it's right here that the character of our regiment was first, quite literally, forged in fire.
On May 18, 1849, the unit officially comes into being. It's called the 5th Regiment of Punjab Infantry, and their mission? Well, it was crystal clear and incredibly tough. Go secure the Punjab Frontier, one of the most volatile places you could imagine. This was no cushy posting. It was a constant, grinding test of skill and survival. Now, this regiment wasn't just on its own. It was part of this bigger, elite group called the Punjab Frontier Force, and they had this amazing nickname, the Piffers. You have to understand, that name was a real badge of honor. Being a piffer meant you were one of the best, part of a force that had one of the toughest jobs in the entire British Empire. So, after proving themselves on the frontier, you'd think things might get a little easier, right? Nope. The regiment was about to be thrown into some of the biggest, most defining conflicts of the 19th century. This is where their reputation was really cemented. Their trial by fire just kept on going. First, the massive Indian Mutiny in 1857, then the brutal Second Afghan War in 78, and then the Tirah campaign in 97. I mean, each one of these was a major, demanding conflict, and each one just added another layer to the unit's growing legend.
And they weren't just showing up. They were always in the thick of it. We're talking about heavy fighting in Oudh during the mutiny, storming the heights in the critical Battle of Peshawar Kudal, and making a desperate stand to defend the Sherpur cantonment in Kabul during the war in Afghanistan.
All right, so as the calendar pages turn from the 1800s to the 1900s, the regiment's world is about to get way, way bigger. All those frontier conflicts, they were about to look small compared to the war that was coming, a war that would swallow the entire globe. But right before that global explosion, the unit gets another makeover. In 1903, the British Indian Army goes through these huge reforms, and our regiment gets a new name, the 58th Vaughan Rifles Frontier Force. And that's the name they'd carry with them into World War I. And this slide right here really shows you just how incredibly adaptable this regiment was. First, they're sent to the Western Front. You know, the nightmarish mud and trenches of France, a total meat grinder. Then, they get shipped to the Middle East, a completely different world, a war of movement in the blistering desert. Being able to fight and win in two such drastically different environments, that's just remarkable. It proved they were as professional as any army on the planet. And just look at their battle honors from this time. It reads like a history book of the war itself. On the Western Front, they fought at Neuve-Chapelle and Loos. Then in the Middle East, they played a key role in the Third Battle of Gaza, the capture of Jerusalem, and the huge, decisive Battle of Megiddo, which pretty much broke the back of the Turkish army in Palestine. So the Great War finally ends, but the world has completely changed. And the regiment, well, it has to change right along with it. This next chapter is all about constant reorganization, and it leads up to one of the biggest political earthquakes of the 20th century. You can really track this whole journey just by looking at its name changes. In 1922, another reorganization, and it becomes the 5th Battalion of the 13th Frontier Force Rifles. Every name change tells you something about how the wider army was shifting. But that core identity, that direct line back to 1849, it always stayed intact. And then came 1947, the seismic shift, the partition of India. The British Empire is leaving and the subcontinent is split in two. The Frontier Force Rifles, our battalion included, gets allocated to the army of a brand new nation, Pakistan. I mean, just imagine that. For the soldiers, this was a massive reorientation. After nearly 100 years of serving the British Crown, the regiment suddenly had a new flag to fight for. So that brings us to the final chapter of this amazing story. After surviving empires, world wars, and the birth of nations, what actually happened to this historic unit? Did it just fade away? Not at all. After one last reorganization in 1956, where it was renamed the 10th Battalion, the regiment continues its service to this very day. It is a living, breathing piece of history inside the modern Pakistan Army, still proudly known as the Piffers.
So from that first day back in 1849 all the way to today, that's 177 years of continuous history. Think about that, an unbroken line stretching from a dusty frontier fort in British India to a modern army in the 21st century.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The story of this one regiment is such a powerful reminder that our institutions, they have life stories, just like people do. Stories of survival, of change, and of an identity that somehow endures through it all. They're often hidden right there in plain sight, just waiting for us to look a little closer. Thanks for joining me on this one.